All right, so WWDC, we had our keynote, we had some hardware, and we had some software. So we're going to talk about software, and in another video, we'll talk about hardware. So let's get into the software that was released at WWDC. Not released, technically, I guess it was kind of a announcement of the betas. But anyway, let's get started. Anyway, getting into what was kind of gone over at WWDC, we have quite a lot to unpack, which is funny because Samsung's event is called Unpacked, but everybody's been using the word unpacked for WWDC, which I think is kind of funny. So a lot of people have been going over the different things based on how they were announced at the keynote. I'm going to go down the list by things that interest me the most software-wise, then we'll move to hardware. So the first and most interesting thing that was gone over at WWDC was iPad OS. Everybody thought that they were going to make some sort of OS specific to the iPad, and they did, and it's iPad OS, and it's almost everything that every sort of heavy power user of an iPad was wishing for. Like, almost everything. You've got cursor support, you've got split screen that is actually useful, you've got USB thumb drive support. Thank God. Like, literally, I installed the first beta. Don't do it, by the way. It is extremely buggy. I don't recommend it, but if you do, more power to you, I guess.
Here's to the crazy ones.
But I installed the first beta, and the first thing I did was grab one of my Samsung T5 drives and plugged it right into that iPad, and sure enough, it popped right up in the Folders app, and it is perfect. I can move files back and forth. I can pretty much put anything I want anywhere I want on that iPad, almost to the point where I feel like my next iPad will probably have to have a bit more storage because I'm going to be moving things around a lot. The one downside though is because this is in beta, there are still quite a few apps like LumaFusion that don't support editing from an external drive. You can't move footage in from an external drive yet. When you pull up the Folders app, it literally just shows you what it knows to see. It doesn't actually bring up the USB drives yet. So there's some improvements and some updates that are going to need to be made for like specific apps like that, but in general, it's here to stay, and it's something we've been asking for a very long time, and I'm so happy that it is finally here. A couple of little things of note: they added the ability to pin the widgets to the left side of the screen, which is kind of nice. So now you have sort of a quick at-a-glance day view of things that are important to you. I pinned the weather and the battery status of any of my devices. Not bad. It's kind of a nice thing to have. The cursor support is kind of weird because it's actually technically a like add-in for assistive touch. I'm not using it. I don't think I will use it because I don't care about cursor support on the iPad. The touch interface is good enough. Improved split screen and slide over multitasking, so you can flip between apps very quickly. In the slide-in view, you can split screen the same app, so you can have two folders or two notes all in one, sort of like what you had with Safari, but now it's not just limited to Safari. And of course, a whole bunch of other features that also kind of tie in with iOS. So now we'll get into iOS. So of course, iOS 13, what else is there to be said? It's been quite a big feature update. They've done a few things like changed the contacts icon, but everybody who was expecting like a full icon redesign, sorry, that's kind of not something that happened. But we do get a lot of really nice software improvements there that of course also carry over to iPad OS, because iPad OS is still at its core kind of rooted in iOS, but you get a lot more features. iOS though, there have been a lot of things added and it's extremely nice. One of the things that was added that everybody was begging for, and it's finally here, a dark mode for iOS. Thank God. Everybody wanted iOS to have a dark mode for so long, and it's kind of funny how big of a priority this was, even though it's not exactly something that I really super care about, but I'm just glad that people can stop complaining about it now. And it is nice to have. It saves battery on OLED phones, and it does actually, let me pull it up here, it does actually do things like change full web and message and everything into a dark mode. Now, obviously, if certain apps don't support it, or apps like Twitter support it, but it's not native, you actually have to still go into the individual apps and change it for third party. They added some new things with the camera, an editing tool in the camera to actually change the photos in the application and change the videos in the application. You can do some levels of video editing, including color correction. You can change perspective, which is really cool. So you actually get like a warp tool It's actually really neat. I was not expecting something that advanced in the Photos app. Actually, I'm sorry, the Camera app. But the Photos app did also get a massive redesign, and it's really nice. You get this day view of things that you took today, things you took yesterday, and you can kind of scroll through the days. You can see the month. You can even see the year, and it's pretty cool because it's sort of an improved and refined version of that layout that they gave you before as you zoomed out and you could see locations by year and month and all that kind of stuff, but it's more sort of compact and screen size friendly. You also get a few things like sign in with Apple, where you don't have to sign in with social media accounts. You can sign in directly with Apple, so some of the more shady websites that like to kind of take your information and sell it out and say like, oh, they signed in with a social media account, we know their email address now. Apple will actually generate a random email address when you use sign in with Apple, so that if you don't want companies getting that information, they won't get it. It's actually really neat, and I like that stance on privacy that Apple has always had. It's very nice, and I think this is actually going to be a pretty big game changer for a lot of the auto sign-in tools. Maps got an improvement where it's actually going to be a significantly more advanced mapping system. You kind of get things like Street View, but a little bit better. I'm curious to see exactly how it's implemented. I'm holding off on my really genuine thoughts on maps because it's not 100% finished in the beta, which I wouldn't expect it to be, but you also still have, of course, the stigma of, oh, it's Apple Maps, so it's probably trash anyway, which, if you still think that, I'm sorry. Apple Maps has gotten a lot better, but if you still think that, that's your opinion, and I'm not, who am I to disprove it? Siri got an improved voice, and in the HomePod system, you actually have the ability for multiple voices to be recognized. Something that Google and Alexa have had for quite a while now, but it's nice to see they're catching up. In fact, they did implement some new HomeKit technology, including the fact that now you get secured video footage done local and saved out to iCloud encrypted. And this is actually 10 days of cloud storage, completely separate of the camera plan. So some cameras like Arlo's, for example, they have a 7-day cloud service and you can pay for more, but that 7 days is included with the cost of the camera. These, you literally hook the camera up to HomeKit and there's your 10 days as long as it's HomeKit compatible, as well as HomeKit compatible routers. And considering I'm moving out soon, that really interests me because I'm a smart home expert in a undisclosed job, and it's interesting to see this kind of stuff start to make it into the smart home space. I'm going to go into more details of things that I think are really cool about iOS in a separate video, but I figured I'd go over some of this stuff now because of the fact that it's just kind of interesting to me. Now we're going to move on to macOS. So the new version of macOS, Catalina Wine Mixer, or rather just Catalina, got a couple kind of interesting updates. There wasn't really a whole lot done core-wise to macOS, at least not what really seemed to be a core update. It seems like an S upgrade or something along those lines for software. You get some improved photo application features. You get a couple little improvements here and there to, I guess, performance and stuff like that. The big change, and really the biggest and really the only thing I took away from the Catalina update, apart from the cool new wallpaper and the name, is iTunes. iTunes is no more that 2-decade-old piece of software that originally literally just started as a CD burner and a CD ripper, is now completely disbanded, and it's now 3 separate applications. You have a podcast app, you have an Apple TV app, and you have an Apple Music app. And I'm curious to see how this is going to play out in the future when it comes to Windows users, because even on my gaming PC that I use very seldom, I still have iTunes installed, and you can get iTunes on the Windows App Store. So I'm wondering if they're going to make those 3 separate apps completely available in Windows, or if Windows users are just going to kind of have to make do with having iTunes still. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Also, the way you interact with your phone, if you do still plug your phone into a computer, is updated and kind of different now. You have this method where you plug it in and it shows up in Finder, but you still can't access the file system. It's literally just the same window you get in iTunes, just separated into Finder now. All in all, I kind of just glossed over Catalina Wine Mixer because I wasn't super interested in it. It's kind of, macOS for me is literally just the means of getting my videos edited and put up on YouTube. Like, that is pretty much all I use macOS for. I use my iPad literally as my main computer, apart from video editing, because some things I can edit on it, but especially when it comes to videos like these, where it's 4K, I just finished editing a video for next week on my iPad Pro in 4K in this 2:1 aspect ratio, and it was a nightmare, because while it's capable of handling 4K footage, and it's actually fairly respectable at the export times, it's just not quite there yet, at least The beta isn't quite there yet. Maybe I'll be able to do it in the future with the beta, but right now the beta just can't do it, and I still use macOS. In fact, I upgraded to the beta of Catalina, and it was so not stable enough for me to do this kind of work that I actually went and downgraded back to High Sierra, or Mojave rather, within 24 hours of installing the beta. I have never done that with a single beta in my life until now because I need something that is reliable. I guess one other cool thing of note that I kind of played around with for a little bit, but again, only had Catalina for 24 hours before going back, was the ability to, I think what was it called, Sidecar? Yeah, Sidecar, where you actually can wirelessly connect your iPad up with your Mac. And I had actually paid for the app called Duet, and for the price, you'd think that Duet is a really cool, really well-made app. You'd think so. You have to plug in your iPad. It doesn't actually scale the screen to the full resolution of the iPad, so you get stuck with either a really low resolution, kind of crappy looking image, or a really high resolution image that still doesn't take up the whole screen. And when I had to hook it up and wait for it to find it, I had to open one app and then another app and try to get it all to work. I literally just wrote off the price and just said, screw it, this is completely worthless. I don't think anybody's going to get this right. Until Apple did it, I literally hit Sidecar, connect to iPad, no wires required. I was waiting for it to tell me what to do and how to plug it in, and it just hooked up, completely wireless, zero latency. I could use my Apple Pencil as an input device. I opened up Photoshop and drew for a little bit. It was amazing. If the rest of Catalina hadn't been so buggy, I would have left it there, and I would have absolutely had my iPad Pro hooked up as another display on this desk that already has an ultra-wide and another 1080p display. It was that good. And I guess screen time came to macOS, whatever. And then we have WatchOS, which was probably one of the least interesting things for me. It was cool, but I didn't really pay much attention to it because I was just going to install the beta and kind of just see what happens. That's what I did. I installed the beta to see what happens. I love the, what is it called, the solar watch face or whatever it is. It's this. It's a very cool watch face. I really like it. And a couple other little features, the Decibel, like the hearing health app, where you can actually see the volume of the room and see if it's safe. That's pretty neat to have. You also have the ability to, for women, you can track your cycles. And the biggest thing, one of the things I thought was really awesome, especially considering the fact that the cellular Apple Watch can be almost completely independent of the phone apart from apps, is that you can now install apps directly to the Apple Watch. It's awesome. I can actually go into an app store dedicated to the Apple Watch and download things completely independent of the watch. And now you don't even need the companion phone app. You don't need the companion phone app at all. You literally just download it on the watch itself, and it runs on the watch itself like it has been, but it doesn't have to even sync back to the phone. It just puts it on the watch. It's kind of neat. I'm curious with certain apps that kind of keep track of data, like sleep tracking and stuff like that. I'm wondering how those will work, especially considering the fact that you have this sort of weird storage limit on the Apple Watch. I don't know how they're going to overcome that for the storage for other applications, but I guess we'll find out. And that was pretty much it for software, and it was a long keynote. It was one of the longer keynotes, which for WWDC it usually is, but I thought that it was pretty cool. I think it was well worth the wait for certain things like iPadOS and iOS with dark mode. Like, I was overall happy with what we got, and I think that it was actually really, really cool. So what do you guys think? What are you guys most excited for on iOS? How many of you have Android phones and are yelling at your screen telling me that these features have been around for years? I want to know. I'm really curious because I'm excited to finally have it. I'm excited to actually really see some of the improvements. I've always loved beta testing because you get to kind of see things as they get improved, and that's probably why whenever I get an Android phone, I somewhat enjoy it because I love beta testing, and no Android phone I've ever owned has felt 100% finished. So that was unnecessary hate, I apologize. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm curious to see your thoughts. Otherwise, check out the other video I'll be posting soon about the hardware that came out at WWDC. And let's just agree to be very civil in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Make sure to be there, and have a good one.